Hi there. I visited
Hey.
a friend the other day, and as I walked into her house smelled like dog poop. And I was like, whoa. And the homeowner was really embarrassed about the smell. And as her little dog came running up, he was kind of like hiding and kind of looking around and kind of skittish. And I could tell the little dog was ashamed too, because it was probably dog poop that I was smelling. And the homeowner says, "Hey, I'm really sorry that I invited you over here and that my house smells so bad, but I can't find the poop. And so I'm hoping that you can help me find the dog poop." And as we looked around the house together, I couldn't find it either. And the little dog kept like cowering away. I'm like, this dog's embarrassed. This is really sad. So I brought the little dog over, and lo and behold, the dog was had pooped, but it was still stuck to his behind, and the fur, it was caught in the fur. And so we had to bathe the dog and we had to try to clean the dog up so that we could get rid of the smell. But the reason that I bring this up is because sometimes pets have accidents and sometimes they leave a mess behind, and the owners are embarrassed and the dogs are embarrassed. And then what do you do? So I was really excited when I found Allie Smith today and that she was going to be able to come on our show. And the reason I was excited is because she has trained over 1,200 dogs. So she used to be a pet sitter, and then she moved into being a pet trainer. And she's got one of the best dog blogs that is up and running right now. And so she's got a wealth of information for us. And she's the owner of a company called Rebarkable. Isn't that a cool name?
It's
But I'm going
cute,
to ask
isn't
you,
it?
it's super cute. I'm going to ask you guys, if you will, today to jump in with your pet mess questions, because today we're streaming to the Ask a House Cleaner show, and we have a lot of professional house cleaners that are wondering, is it their job to clean up a pet mess when they get into a house? And then also, we want to ask the homeowners if you have a question today, because we're also streaming to our Clutter Corner live show. And so, if you are a homeowner and you have a pet and you might have pet accidents from time to time, this is the chance to get them answered because Allie is our expert. So please help me welcome Allie Smith to our show. How are you
Hi.
today?
Good. Thank you very much for having me. I'm really excited to get the opportunity to talk to your audience. Because I think, we all love our animals and we all want the best for them. But you guys have a particularly unique placement in this situation, and it's going to be a really interesting one to dive into.
Well, let's start with the situation of me going into my friend's house. And there we have this situation where there's obviously something that's happened. How do we deal with
Yeah.
that first? First, from I'm coming in, I'm from the outside. I don't live in the house, but I'm smelling the
Mhm.
dog poop. And there are
Mhm.
lots of people that after a while they don't smell the animals in their house.
No.
So how do we deal with that first?
So the first thing is making sure that the person you're going to see is willing to talk about it and happy to engage in that conversation, which is one of those awkward social situations that we're like, should I say anything? Don't I say anything? What do I do? Um, but for me, I think sometimes if we address the elephant in the room, just go, can I? Is there something like have you even if you go at the polite route of have you changed an air freshener or something? Even if it because there are some smells that we like and other people don't, but dog poop isn't usually one of them. And if they sort of do engage, that's when you can be like, okay, well, can I help you? Particularly like if they're less able, you know, um, they might be really grateful that you're willing to help them with this sort of thing. And as long as we're not offensive about it, it's usually okay. And then probably do exactly as you've done, go for a little hunt through the house, which is probably the worst treasure hunt in the world. Um, and if you don't find anything, that is probably when we do investigate, the dogs, because it does happen. Particularly like if we have client, like if your customers or the people that live in the home have longer hair, like our dogs inevitably swallow longer hair, right? And then they all they can end up with a little nugget just hanging off somewhere that they can't quite get to. And particularly breeds like Dachshunds and Corgis that have the long body, and sometimes Yorkshire Terriers, if they can't actually reach their backside, they can't sort that out by themselves, and that's when if they're bath friendly, if they're okay with a bath, great. If they're not, a wet wipe is absolutely fine. And if mum and dad aren't necessarily too precious about, what their groom has done or like a particular cut or style, and they are hair based, you can just snip it. You know, you're not going to snip a golden retriever, but something like a doodle, usually you can do a little bit of a quick cut and just get rid of it, because that is probably the least stressful for all involved. Because you know, I'm a big advocate of not stressing our dogs out. Because also stressed dogs tend to make stressed dog parents. So, you know, it keeps everyone happy. But yeah, it's that would be how I would probably have approached that one.
Well, I appreciate your insights because it was a sensitive conversation and I smelt it when I walked in. I wasn't going to be the first one to say anything. But
No,
when my friend said, "Oh, I should apologize for the smell. This is really bad." And she was
okay.
the one to bring it up, then I said,
Yeah,
what's going on here? Maybe let's take a look
talk
at the
to me.
dog and see if
Yeah.
we could find it. Yeah.
Mm.
So I appreciate your insights on that. I want to stop for a second and I want to say hey to Rachel Rose. She says, so glad to be here. I have 3 dogs and I have a never ending job picking up their hair. I'm actually
Me too.
collecting the hair to make a homemade knitted jumper. I love that. Natasha.
I've often debated. Sorry to interrupt you. I've often debated whether you can use dog fur as like insulation for the house, because I'm like, huh.
There's a lot of it, huh?
Sometimes.
Natasha Allred says, my English bulldog has made my cloth couch stink because of him yeasty nose. How would you clean the couch to get the stink out? That's a great question.
Yeah, yeast is a fun one. I think that's going to be vinegar, isn't it? Because vinegar tends to neutralize the yeast and what would grow. Because you know that yeast is a living organism, right? So you've got to kill the actual yeast itself. But the other thing is with your bulldog, take a look at his diet, because yeasty dogs tend to have something in their diet that's encouraging yeast production. So if you can tinker with his diet a little bit, you should actually get his yeast down, which once you've cleaned your sofa will stop the reinfection of the sofa, and it will save you a lot of cleaning, and it will probably save him a lot of not stress, but like itchiness, because yeast isn't nice when it's in places it shouldn't be. So
No,
yeah.
and I'm glad you brought that up because there are little animals that stink sometimes, and then the
Mm,
homeowners will try to just brush their teeth or try to think of things. And I'm glad you brought up
mm.
changing the diet because sometimes it
Diet is
is
huge.
diet related, and that's how they're processing and digesting it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the core components, even on a smelly dog. Like if your dog has a really particularly pungent odor to them generally, you change their diet to something slightly higher quality, their smell tends to reduce, which explaining that to people sometimes is almost like mind blowing, but you know, it's hard when we've been sort of marketed, you know, all these really low quality kibbles, and we go, oh, but the TV said it was great, or you know, similar. And well, it's true though, isn't it? Marketing these days is really powerful, and we've been so like indoctrinated by it that we just don't question it anymore. It's like, oh, it said on that one it won all the awards, and it's like, oh yeah, but did it though? So yeah, it sometimes is questioning also what works for your dog specifically, because much like us, dogs, cats, gerbils, everything has a specific biome that everything works through, and if it doesn't agree with them specifically, it doesn't matter what it did for other dogs. It's all about your dog or cat.
Well, and that's really important to know
Mm,
because sometimes, like you said, we fall victim to marketing, and then on the other end of it, there will be an accident or something, and then how do we
mm,
clean up that particular dog? And I think many people, and I'm not saying all people, because I know there are people that do lots of studies
mhm.
and research, and they research the breed and all the things.
Yes.
But there are a lot of people that just end up with a dog, and maybe it's a loose dog or a stray dog or a
Mhm,
rescue or something, and they just bring the dog in and then they haven't read a manual and they don't know how to take care of the dog. And so they don't know how to train it. They don't know
mhm,
what the particular specificities of the
mhm.
dog's diet or the any of those things. So they're kind of like winging it, you know?
Yeah, and I think that tends to happen with a lot of like trendy breeds. So that there's this really big misconception in my industry, and this is slightly tangential to what we're talking about, but that like the doodles and your cockapoos, and so like your labradoodle, your cockapoo, that they tend to be like neurotic, crazy dogs. But it's actually usually not that they're neurotic or crazy or untrainable or any of these weird labels that they get. It's actually just that they've been marketed so strongly as a beginner-friendly dog that all the beginners get them. And then they realize they have all of these needs. And they're like, well, what do you mean I've got to take them for like 3 hours a walk a day and stimulate their brain and train them and do all this? And it's like, yeah, they because the poodle's in there, they are smart. So yes, they shed less, not totally shed free, but less. But they are smart. And when they're smart, if you don't push the brain, they get into trouble, because that's, you know, the what's the phrase, the devil makes work for idle thumbs, definitely happens with dog brains too.
So, and that's really interesting. I think that's a lot like people, where, you know,
Yes.
a tiny little baby seems like it's easy to take care of, but it's actually, as it grows in
Oh yeah.
responsibility as well.
Oh
So,
yes.
Wannabe Trucker 74 says, are there any products we should not use around our pets?
Yeah, this is actually really, really important, and I'm really glad somebody asked it, because the stronger the smell on stuff, it can throw our dogs, because our dogs are something like 50 times more perceptive to smell than humans, which is astonishing. And they basically see the world in smell. So if we sort of like wash their blankets with fabric softener and things like that, it can actually have a long-term detrimental effect on them and their well-being. And that has been shown in studies, which is mildly terrifying, because I definitely used to do that until this study came out. I was like, okay, we're ditching the fabric softener. Certainly on the dog stuff. I mean, on the human stuff is slightly different, but anything that, for mine, that they have their nose on regularly tends to not get put in the same wash as everything else.
So would you avoid fabric softeners and detergents that have strong smells for that reason?
Yes, and certainly like the scent boosting stuff, I would absolutely give that a ditch. There are also certain essential oils that I cannot remember off the top of my head. Why does that always happen? That are like really, really toxic to dogs. So like in air fresheners and in like floor soaps and things like that, it can cause a big problem. So yeah, do make sure that whatever you're using is pet friendly. That's why I particularly like going for really basic ingredients like baking soda and vinegar and things like that. So I tend to use vinegar as a fabric softener in my dog stuff, because that's fine. You know, washes through, all good. And then if you are particularly concerned about smells in it, because we all know that dogs can be a bit stinky, hanging them out on a washing line when they're gone through the washer is a really good plan, because not only is the wind going to knock out some more of the dog fur that might have been stuck on there, the UV rays kill smell. So it's a really nice sort of double hit then, to get it all nice and fur free and back in the house and smelling decent, you know. So there are sort of more pet friendly ways to keep your home smelling good. Because we don't, you know, just because we've got a dog, our house doesn't need to smell like dog. So yeah, that's my big one with living with dogs.
Well, aside from talking about cleaning up messes and things, can we talk about fur for a minute? Because many
Yes.
dogs have lots of fur. And one of the
Mm.
questions I get asked a lot from both homeowners and professional house cleaners is, how on earth are we supposed to clean up all the fur? And it seems like there are times of the year when dogs even shed more fur than other times of the year. And can you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that and how we're
Yeah.
supposed to manage that?
So this one's gonna really be down to you knowing your client and knowing their dogs, essentially, because different dog breeds have different styles of coats. So your Yorkshire Terrier coat is not the same as your Beagle's coat, which is not the same as your German Shepherd's coat or your Husky's coat or any of those. So there's double coated breeds, which is your German Shepherd, your Husky, your Labrador, your Golden Retriever, and they're the breeds that you will not see really go to the groomer that often, because they're meant to be your wear and tear dogs. They're meant to go out into the bush or out into the wild, whatever you're doing, and come back, and they will shed the dirt naturally. as they shed their fur or anything like that. Those dogs tend to be a bit grubbier to live with just because of that fact. Then you've got your hair-based coats like your Yorkshire Terrier, your West Highland Terrier, your most Labradoodles and Poodles and Bichon Frise, all those. And then you've got your short coat, slick coated dogs like greyhounds, your most hound breeds, basically. And they all require like different grooming practices. So for your slick coated dogs, something like a rubber curry comb, this is literally it's not paid product placement at all. This is literally just stuff that I use with mine. This is a Kong Zoom groom, and it's basically just a rubber curry comb like you'd use on a horse. Really good for short fur and really good for guard hairs. So if you've got a German Shepherd as well, that will take out the long guard hairs. The fluffier stuff, the undercoat on your double coated dogs, you want something like that, which is a butter comb. That will go through. That'll also work really well for your doodles and your poodles and all your hair-based breeds, because it's designed to go in close to the skin and lift. Do it gently. Please don't stress your dogs out too much. The other one that's really great for fluffy coats is something like that, which is just a pet teaser. And it's the same one that humans use. It's just been redesigned with a few little cute dog designs on the back. Exact same. But it works really well, as you can see, for the fluffy coats, which I literally was using this a little while ago, because I decided it probably was best to come on this stream with my dogs defloofed. So yeah, the tools you use are really important, and then your haired breeds probably go to the groomer more often too, so they're probably going to create less floof. And then there's certain, gosh, this feels like a meandering answer, but then certain tools will pick up certain hair types better. So like my shark lift away, again, there is no paid product placement here, please don't think that, but that for me works really well on my German Shepherd's hair. But my Roomba is really, really good at getting up the hound hairs, which are a slick coat. So yeah, it just depends. And sometimes it is like tinkering with the formula as to what works where. So, in a house that's like mine, where you've got a mix of coats, you're going to want a mix of approaches. But if you know that you're going into a home who's got 3 huskies, and it is seasonality, I need to talk about that too. And you walk in there and you know that they're shedding, book in more time, because it will get under the sofas, it will stick on all the surfaces, it will do all of that. And I think if you actually say to the homeowner, hey, I know the season change is coming up, do you want to keep me posted about fur levels, because if I will just book in an extra hour if that's okay, and make sure that I can go through it thoroughly. Because most of us dog parents don't like the floof that our dogs put out, and we all kind of understand that, they do that seasonal shed. So the seasonality with your double coated dogs, so again, your German Shepherds, your Labradors, your Huskies, etc., they will shed on the switch between hot and cold and cold and hot. So spring and autumn tend to be like your peak seasons for fur. So we are like right in one right now. So yeah, it's timely.
And from the house cleaning side of that, at the time the animals are shedding, that's also cobweb season. So the spiders will try to come in when the seasons change from hot to cold and cold to hot. And so that's a really good time to book in a deep cleaning, where you're going to need some extra time for the shedding of the animals, and then also for cobwebs, and then other things, which lots of other bugs will then try to either come in out of the cold or get out because it's too hot or something like that.
Yeah.
So the seasons are a time that, deep cleaning is a definite must.
That's a perfect way to, a good excuse. Maybe there should be like a 6 reasons to do a deep clean in spring and autumn.
There you go. Terry Williams says, we got an English retriever. The hair is out of control. Robo vacuum sure helps. So I'm glad, Terry, that you found something that works. But yes, it's true, when you get a dog and it's the first time you've had a dog that sheds that way, it can be a little bit surprising. And can
Oh,
you speak to us for a second about how frequently you might comb a dog with those special brushes that you showed
um,
us?
so I tend to do once a week. But again, it depends. Like, so your labradoodles and things, all of those sorts of coats, you're gonna want to do almost daily, but you might just do like a leg every day because it can
A
be
leg.
well, it can be really stressful on the dogs because most dogs don't like being groomed, right? They don't really enjoy it. So if you sort of set a realistic like achievement and it's not, okay, you've now got to stand still, Fido, for the next hour whilst I comb you to oblivion, it can feel much more realistic for you and the dog, so you can actually make the process more rewarding, part of your normal schedule. And if you just do like their back leg this day, their back that day, their stomach this day, you fill out the week, and then that way they're only getting like 10-15 minutes of actual grooming, so it just makes
Mhm.
it a little bit easier on the dog. So yeah, if you like, it really depends on your lifestyle and how fussy you are as well. But the more you groom them and the more you get out of them, particularly like on the season changes, the easier it's going to be to keep it clean because
Speaking of clean,
Mhm.
many dogs will go outside and do their business outside, then they run back in the house. And if it's been raining or it's muddy outside, they'll just track all that stuff into
Mhm.
your house. Do you have any suggestions on how to keep a house clean when a dog runs back in enthusiastically from being outside and kind of shakes the head and it goes all over and they've got mud prints everywhere? And
Yeah, so there's two real main points, right? You've got the paws and then the body. The paws, get a stupidly absorbent bath mat. It's my best tip for that one. Because as soon like you kind of want something that as soon as they hit it, it absorbs as much as possible, right?
okay.
And if that can happen, usually that's your bath mat. Usually
Is that
that's
going to be a rubber backed bath mat or is there a particular
I
kind
would.
that you
I
recommend?
would I would do a rubber backed bath mat, and it doesn't need to be anything special, but just as absorbent as you can. And then you've got things like drying coats, which you can't really see, but essentially, whoops, and I'm getting stuck to it. It goes over the back, up the neck, and there's a tummy strap that goes in, under, and around. You're not getting in it right now, sweetheart. I'm sorry. um,
So is
yeah.
this something that the dog wears, or do you
Yes.
just kind of wrap them? Okay.
It's kind of basically a robe for dogs. So as soon as they sort of come in from outside where it's pouring with rain or a swimming session, anything like that, throw that on them, belt it round, and they can just trot around the house. And every time they shake, it just kind of helps dry them off and keeps all the mess within the robe effectively. And you can
What
just
a
throw it in
great
the wash.
idea.
Ah, I tell you what, dog people are geniuses with this sort of stuff because they don't like it. And nobody wants, the muddy spray up the walls, do they, after their dogs come in? It's like, oh my god. So yeah, there's all sorts of like awesome inventions like that, which make
So
things easier.
there's mud that where the dogs shake their head and it kind of flies everywhere.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit, if you will, about dog slobber, where dogs just slobber and then it's like got protein and enzymes in it and it's really hard to clean up and you wipe it up and then there's still traces of it and all that stuff. How do you clean up that?
That one is a really good question. Mine aren't too slobbery. You can train dogs though to actually wipe their mouth. So you can actually train that behavior so that they deal with it themselves before it goes all up the wall.
And how
Um,
do you do that? What is the process for that?
so one of the best ones I've seen, and it's a silly video, but it works. Is a Great Dane that every time after he's drinking, they've got a bowl beside the water bowl with essentially like a hand towel like strung around another bowl that's right beside it, and they're like, wipe
Mhm.
your mouth, and he literally just goes over and goes swish swish, gets all the stuff in the jowls and is done. So yeah, that it's basically just you'd have to lure them to play it to the area, bring their face down and go one across, two across, and then reward for that, and
Uh-huh.
pair it with a cue, slowly fade out the treat. It's fussy, but it's one of those things that can make your life a lot easier. In terms of cleaning though, I usually find like hot soapy water, but it also depends on the surface, right? Because like
Mhm.
if you've got it on like chalk paint, you don't want to be putting hot soapy water on chalk paint, because it's just going to start like absorbing it. And yeah, so that one I would dictate more by the surface than the material, if that makes sense.
Well, I love the fact that you train a dog. I never thought about training a dog not to slobber and not to just kind of like spew it all over the walls,
Yeah,
because once it dries on the walls, it becomes
mm,
hard, and
mm.
it's like hard and crunchy. And you got to, if you're gonna scrape it off, you can scrape it off with a plastic razor. But because of the
Oh,
proteins that are inside it, it still leaves a little mark, like a little, almost
oh,
like a grease stain on the wall. And so depending on the dog and depending on the slobber, it can be really hard to clean up. You're like, what on earth? And then all around
yeah,
all around the rooms, like 4 feet below, you'll see all
yeah.
these like little spots, and it's where the dogs have slobbered.
Do you know the other one that is? I really hope you don't mind me saying this,
No,
but
we're
the
here
other,
to learn. We're here to learn. Please.
I'm going to try and remain as professional as possible in this discussion. But the other one that is awful to clean up is the male dog smegma. Because when you get a male puppy or you leave your dog intact, they do tend to do the exact same thing that teenage boys do. And that is particularly not easy to get off of any sort of fabric surface. So, like a fabric sofa, which the dog might climb up onto and curl up with mum and dad in the evening, tends to get
Mhm.
these weird little marks on it. And the dog parents are usually like, I have no idea where this is coming from. And it's like, it's your boy dog. Ta-da! Welcome to having males. Yeah, I have
So
all.
how do you get that up?
Um, Again, I found like a biological either soap or dish soap works really well because it kind of cuts into that. I mean, it's the same as washing clothes with it, you know.
Okay.
It's kind of gross, but it's one of those things that does happen. And people really often underestimate how, you know, and like my clients are usually mystified. They're like, this thing's happened, and I don't understand. Is he okay? It's like, yeah, he's fine. It's just not. It's normal. It's just gross.
So in America, we have a product called
Hmm.
Odoban Biostain and Odor Remover. And it's
Mm,
actually an enzymatic cleaner
yeah.
that breaks down the proteins.
Mm.
And so, oddly enough, while it's wonderful for pets, as house cleaners, we use it for like ring around the collar and underarm sweats
Oh,
and stuff like that for
really?
people. Yeah. But it's really,
That's
really good for pets because it's clear. So, you're talking
yeah,
about the fabric that then
yeah.
has like stains on it, but it will clear up those stains. And then also because of the enzymes, it eats up the odors as it cleans.
Do you
So
know,
that's
I've
a,
never actually considered using like the same stuff that I would use for removing pee. So I often recommend Nature's Miracle as well. That's
oh
also a
yeah,
really
uh-huh.
solid one. So there that was kind of my favorite for that. But yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I never put that up. I never put that together with like collar stains and things. That's really interesting. Thank you.
Well, but there are cleaners that are
Mm,
really good for protein stains. And what we don't realize is like when a baby spits up,
mm.
oftentimes that's the same as like if a cat pukes, there are protein stains. And so there are different enzymes that are in the human
Yeah,
body or an
yeah.
animal body that when it comes out, you're like, wow, that smells really bad. It looks bad. And then it left a mark after we tried to clean it up.
Yeah.
So would you use the same thing for cats? Like if you have a cat that pukes and eats a hairball and then
Puke, yes. Puke, yes. Hairballs, yes. Male cat pee is different. Male cat pee tends to have this long-lasting property that is quite stubborn to get rid of. So the best things I've sort of seen are like your OxyCleans and like your oxygen bombs and things like that. They can be really effective, and also the oxygen bomb actually for like if you've got wooden floor that a pea stain is like sunk into, they can
Mhm.
be really, really good at that. So you may not need to like do the whole sand it back and revarnish it malarkey with a wooden floor. That sometimes the oxygen bomb can actually take the
So
edge off.
for those that are new to the oxygen bomb, tell me a little bit about what that is and how somebody would use it on a hardwood floor, because we get that question a lot.
Oh, well, then you might be better off telling this one than me because I've only ever used it like once or twice. Because like I moved into my house and whoever had lived here before us didn't quite do what they should have done. And again, was looking at the sand the floor, and I'm like, do you know what? Let's just give this a try. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and we sand the floor. So yeah, for us, it was basically just like a powder solution that went on it, and you kind of just left it there for a while. Sorry, with a bit of water, and then it just kind of fizzed and slowly like pulled all of this pea residue, I suppose, out of the wood, and it was really effective. I was really, really surprised, if I'm being honest, and we never actually ended up sanding our floors. So I was quite,
Yay.
yeah, I was dreading that one. I'm not gonna lie to you.
So when you used it then, did it discolor the floor, or did it remove any varnish or anything from the floor,
Um,
or no?
it didn't for us, but we did use it on a particularly mild one, and we kind of did a few mild applications as opposed to like a big hit, because again, I was trying to be really cautious and not remove the varnish, because this is the, you can see it in the background, but it's the original floor that was built with the house, and I was like, I'm
Hmm.
going to have a real tough time trying to color match that if I want to do a small patch. So yeah.
Well, and from the professional house cleaner side, we run the risk when a customer says, "Can you help us clean up this mess?" Because if we use something that then
Mm,
removes the varnish or it discolors the flooring, because we're the last one that touched it, without the customer signing a waiver, we're responsible for replacing their floor if we damage it.
yeah,
And
that's why
so,
that waiver is it's really required.
well, there are a lot of house cleaners that will say, "Hey, we got a problem here because this dog peed on the floor, a cat peed on
Mm,
the floor, and we have a discoloration. We're trying to remove the discoloration and the smell, and we're hesitant because what we think we're going to use may or may not remove that
yeah,
varnish or the top coating."
yeah.
So I just wondered if, beyond the oxygen bomb, if there was anything that you recommended.
Um, Less so for wood floors, but like carpets, baking soda is
Hmm.
really solid. If you went into a house theoretically and you seen it, other than like absorbing it and getting it up as quick as possible, and throwing that away, the next best step is to literally put the baking soda on it on a good solid coat and then leave it alone for as long as
Hmm.
possible to let that baking soda do as much of the job as it physically can. Um, and that way you don't have to do a huge amount of scrubbing either, because I know scrubbing can ruin stuff, and that with your line of work must be tough, because I had the luxury with the oxygen bomb of doing it in small, low level instances, whereas if you're in a house once a week, once a month, whatever, you're not going to have that exposure. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's I like small applications of things. I don't know, but you don't necessarily have that luxury, which is sad. But yeah, sorry.
No, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. From a homeowner's perspective,
Mhm,
if you are a new parent to a dog and your dog has not been trained, what is the
mhm.
quickest, fastest way to help your dog through the series of accidents that are going to happen on your carpet and your flooring and your furniture and all those things? Because while they're
Um,
trying to be trained, there's going to be some
yeah,
mishaps.
yeah. It's really, really hard to avoid any mishaps, and very, very, very few people manage it, understandably. So regular toilet training and skipping potty pads is one of the most effective ways of keeping pee off of your floor. And that would be why, if you are getting a dog, I would always recommend that you avoid your extreme seasons if you live in a particular climate that is quite extreme. Because I've had clients that are like, well, I can't possibly take them outside. It's like 3 foot of snow. Well, I can't do that. They're a 2 pound puppy. It's like, well, yeah, that makes sense. And I have a lot of sympathy then. So if you are planning on getting a dog and you live in one of those environments, try not to get puppy home at that time. That's going to be your first big hit. And secondly, then train them straight to outside. Then it's just about schedule. Then it's literally just a after meals, after play, after they've woken up, after they've drank anything. They're like your hot times for when puppy's most likely going to pee. Take them outside, play with them outside. Make sure you reward them really well for going where you want them to go. And that's then the next biggest cause of slip ups, is that we then assume, once we've got a bit of consistency, we then assume, oh, job done, check that off the list. Don't have to reward them anymore. They've got it. Cool. And then we take the pressure totally off and we go, okay, have your freedom. It's not a checkbox exercise. It's a gradual fade out, right? Because
Okay.
if you go, okay, job done, tick that off, don't reward them anymore, they're going to go, oh, basically, my job doesn't pay me anymore. I'm not going to do the work anymore. Why would I bother? So keep the rewarding up, keep the structure up, keep pushing it, and slowly remove the prompts, the management, the control, essentially. And then you should have success. But then the other thing is just watching them like a hawk. If they're not like in their puppy proof space, watching them really, really closely is one of the easiest ways to catch an accident before it happens.
Tell me about puppy proof space. What is that and how does that work?
You clean up. That's the simple way of putting it.
Okay.
Is put a lot of your cleaning products away. Put your wires out of reach. Put Nana's table and antique vase out of reach. Just minimize what puppy has access to, because dogs don't generalize learning that well. So certainly as a puppy. So we also get a lot of problems then, like when, oh my God, my puppy was totally toilet trained and we went over to my aunt's house and he peed on their rug. I can't believe it. It's like, has puppy ever seen a rug before? Has puppy ever actually been on a rug? So all of a sudden he's gone, oh, okay, and then basically your dog, what you don't realize, your puppy's just learned, I don't pee on hard surfaces. And then when he goes into your aunt's house and there is a rug, he's like, oh, I can pee on this. This is okay. Pees on that. And then it's like, world over. But all people get embarrassed and then it's a problem. But, it's puppies make mistakes. And sometimes their learning isn't necessarily where we think it is. And that's where, like, the puppy proof space is really important. Because if we can at least create a space that they understand almost explicitly that this is a no-go zone, whether that's a crate or a playpen or a certain room, it just creates a small learning environment that they can then slowly expand, and you can help them expand and generalize over time, as opposed to going, here's a whole house, have fun.
Well, and I guess, I mean, I've never really thought of it that way, but I guess in a sense, that's a whole lot like humans. We teach a human that the bathroom is where you do your business. You don't do it all over the house. You just go in this room, and when you're in this room, here's what happens in there,
Exactly. And weirdly enough, the human analogy goes further, because like the stories about the kids that like end up like pooping in the cupboard or something. If you punish your dog, the same thing happens. So like if you use punishment to train a puppy like where not to go, they can end up just hiding from you and assuming that it's, if mum sees me go there, I'll get in trouble. Whereas if they hide it and mum doesn't see it, then we go back to the awful treasure hunt. They won't get in trouble. So it's a really weird juxtaposition that punishment is like this weird false equivalency, and our dogs really struggle to understand that. So yeah.
Well, it sounds like, and in Psychology 101, we learned that the behavior you reward is the behavior that is repeated. And so what I'm hearing you say is that when your dog uses the puppy proof space properly, that's when they should be rewarded. Like, hey, you used the potty. Yay, that's awesome. You rubbed your chin and you got rid of all the dribbles and the slobber. Yay, that's a reward. You came in from outside and you wiped your hands on the little mat that was there for your wet paws. Yay, that's a reward. To train that behavior, so that's the behavior that's repeated. Am I understanding that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's operant conditioning and classical conditioning all combined, and it just means that you're shaping the dog that's easy to live with, as opposed to punishing. And that then goes back to the like psychology experiments too, doesn't it? Like if you entered the one I love, or the thought processes that I love, is if you entered a room with 100 chairs, one chair's yours, but nobody told you which one. And every time you sat on the wrong chair, you got, I don't know, like a small static shock. every time you sat on the wrong chair, you would get really frustrated because you'd be like, just tell me where you want me to sit and I will sit down. Whereas if somebody gave you a $5 bill, £5 note, wherever you are in the world, whatever, for sitting in the right one, you'd sit there next time a lot quicker,
Mhm.
and you wouldn't be worried about where you were meant to be. You'd go, well, last time they gave me a $5 for sitting here, so I'll sit here. And it takes all of that guesswork out. And the more we can take the guesswork out for our dogs or cats, whichever, because it same science works with cats, same science works with killer whales if you want to keep one of them.
No, thank you. But
no, there would be a bit of a mission in a normal house. But if that's your jam, why not? Same science.
so before you were a dog trainer, you were a pet sitter. And so my
Yes.
question is, let's talk for a second about the pet sitting possibilities.
Mm,
So you go away on a trip and you have a pet sitter come in.
mm.
And let's say the pet sitter doesn't know how you've trained your dog or your cat. How do they adapt to that situation? Not knowing maybe the regular routine, not knowing when those you mentioned that after the dog eats or after the dog
Yeah.
drinks, that becomes the moment that you take them out for their bathroom break
Yeah.
or what have you. How does the pet sitter know?
Typically I used to do like a meet and greet with them. So I used to go into the home and have a full-on discussion about what your normal day looks like, and it has to be realistic. That was usually where this fell down, if anywhere, was
Mm.
that, the homeowner and the pet parent would give you this like slightly rose tinted version of their life. And then you'd go in and do the rose tinted version of their life and it didn't work. But I'm sure like in your industry, it must be the exact same thing. But yeah, so I used to go in, have a really solid conversation and say, okay, well, I can't be you because I can't be here 24/7. Because I have my own commitments that I'm kind of bringing you into. So how do we best meet your dog, your cat, their needs whilst you're not here? And then it would kind of be like a negotiation of, okay, well then let's do 2 visits, 3 visits, 10 visits. I'll stay overnight, whatever it is that you need. That's then how I will try and fit in. That's when you suddenly learn that other people's cleanliness standards aren't necessarily yours. And that used to be an interesting conversation. But in the main, it was kind of a just make it work. And then if they asked me to come again, it'd be okay, well, I have now partnered with the local cleaning team and this is what's going to happen. And that wouldn't
Are
happen
you
for all
talking
clients.
about severe cases of neglect in a home, for example, where there's extra clutter or
Yeah,
there's things
yeah.
that haven't been maintained?
Yeah. So sometimes you would walk into a home and it would be a case that the place, so like I used to do overnight stays as well. And that would be when I'd get particularly, cautious about where I was going. And occasionally you'd walk in and the spare room where you would be staying would have dirty sheets on it. It would have like their laundry piled in a corner and like personal belongings all over the place. And then I'm like, oh my God, this is just going to be a nightmare because if they accuse me of stealing a thing that I didn't even know was there, how am I meant to do that? Luckily, my insurance would cover all of that if that happened, but still, it's something you want to avoid, right? So I used to kind of lay out I expect a clear room with no objects in that are of any value. I want a clean place to sleep. And beyond that, I think there was a couple of other little conditions, about the bathroom being usable and things like that. But so long as it was livable and comfortable, then it was okay. And then, silly things like I don't want a camera in the room because that's not okay if you're not watching me sleep. I'm sorry. Yeah, there are all sorts of horror stories like that from my industry, trust me. So it was just a case that you kind of had to make it as clear as possible with the client. And then if those things were violated, it was a case that was the worst part because they'd be away on holiday. And if you didn't do it, nobody did it. But that's when like getting emergency contacts and backup contacts are important, because if it is, say you walk in and it is like totally unworkable, then it's a case that it's okay, well, I'm really sorry, but I'm either going to have to bill you for this cleaning company that's going to do a last minute thing. We will minimize it as much as possible, but this is your option. You either have this or they go to your emergency contact. You get everything but your deposit back, and I'm sorry. So yeah, luckily I think I only ever had to do one of those. But and
So
then
when
next time, if you put your foot down.
So let's flip the script. Okay, so
Mhm.
now let's say that you are the animal and there is a
Mhm.
pet sitter that's coming in to stay with you while their owner goes away for a couple of weeks.
Mhm.
And this has happened as a professional house cleaning company to me on multiple occasions. We've had the homeowner go away on a trip and we come to do our regular cleaning and there will be accidents in the house and there will be pet vomit and things like that where I'm thinking it was a stressful situation because the animal is now out of its regular
Mhm.
routine because the homeowner is gone. How do you come into a situation like that and you say, okay, there's a bunch of stuff now, and we don't know that the animal may have had somebody watching the animal, but
Mhm.
maybe the vomit is like 2 days old or something like that. How do we clean up those kinds of messes?
That then to me would depend on your relationship with local professionals, firstly, your relationship with your client, and whether the pet's actually in danger. Because
Uh-huh.
because if, say you walk in and it's literally like everywhere, there's blood in it, things like that, then it's okay, this looks like a genuine emergency. I'm going to directly contact the pet parents and just make sure and see what's going on. Because they might be aware of it. I mean, let's say the pet sitter's not there, the cat has done that, and the pet sitter's actually already at the vet with them. We don't
Uh-huh.
want to jump to conclusions, just make sure and say, look, I found this. Is everything okay? Something really simple that doesn't assume any blame,
Mhm.
because you want to keep your local professional contacts as good as possible usually. Because professionals, there's always a muck up at some point, and if we can support each other, helps. So if we can not catastrophize things and not panic pet parents as well, everything kind of usually comes out a bit better. But like I said, just depends on whether you think the pet's in danger. Beyond that, I would usually ask from my side of things as a pet sitter, I used to ask if there was a cleaning company coming or window cleaners, anything like that, so that they could make them aware that I was going to be in the house and give them my contact details. Because typically in service-based industries, you want to make it as easy as possible for the client, right? And say for whatever reason I was a pet sitter, I did know that the cat had vomited before I left. I would probably be polite enough to text you guys and go, hey, Fluffy's puked. I'm running out the door. If you don't want to get to it, don't worry, I'll do it when I'm back at lunch or whatever.
Mhm.
But if you can, I'd be grateful, sort of thing. But it wouldn't be expected from my side of things.
As the homeowner,
No, as a pet sitter, I wouldn't
as the
expect
pet
you
sitter.
guys.
Okay.
If the pet's my responsibility, I wouldn't be expecting you to clean that up.
Okay.
Unless you were contracted to do it, that's where the grey area comes in, right? Like if the homeowner and the pet owner has already sort of said and agreed with you guys, you clean up all of this, then I'm gonna be like, well, no, that's you,
Mm.
because yeah, there's
Oh, and
grey
let's talk about that for a second because I
area.
get asked this at least 5 to 10 times a day. As the cleaning company that's
Uh-huh.
going into a home, they walk in and let's assume that there's cat pee or dog poop or cat puke or whatever.
Uh-huh.
There's something on the carpet, and there will just be like a cleaning solution that's right next to the stain. Nobody said a word, but there's this really strong hint like, hey, clean this up. And they're like, the homeowner knew about it because they left me the cleaner right next to the stain. Like, did they want
Yeah.
me to do it? Like, am I obligated to do it? We didn't talk about it. Like, what happens next?
Okay, so I would say that when you guys have an intake form, I'm guessing you must have has dogs, has cats, or whatever. I would suggest there be an addendum to your contract for pet parents, or even just in every contact that contract that says, should you have pets, this is how I will approach it. Because that then takes all of the onus off of you, and then if they've signed it and they've already signed the agreement saying that you don't clean up dog poop, you don't do this, you don't do that, and they know that, then you can go back and go, well, it is in the contract under this clause that I don't do these things. Consequently, I have worked around it to the best of my ability. But personally, I would just do it. As long as it's not too regular. Do you know what I mean? Like if it's a one-off, if it's oh my God, the dog had an accident, sorry to let you know. But yeah, photograph it, send it to them and go, hey, just so you know, Fluffy had an accident, because that's the other thing. Like sometimes if a cleaner comes in and cleans it up and it is out of the ordinary and doesn't tell the dog parent, that could be really important information for the dog's health or stress levels or training or anything like that. So always tell the dog parent, guardian, owner of the home, whoever it is that's your main point of contact, that this has happened, because even like sometimes if they can narrow down the window that it happened in is really important. If they didn't leave you cleaning solution, if they left you cleaning solution, then there might be a talk about manners.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because there is a diplomatic way to deal with that. And what I heard you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, is as you're going into a home as a house cleaner, accepting a job, make it very clear what happens if your pet has an accident during the time I'm employed at your place, so that we both are on the same page as far as the expectations go. And if you clarify those before it happens. Okay.
And then you can just remind them. Yeah. And then you can just remind them, well, when we did enter this agreement on that date and you signed this, we did say this. And then usually they go, oh, okay, I forgot about that. And that's the reasonable client. And, you only really want the reasonable clients. You don't want the unreasonable one that's going to argue with you and go, well, what about this? And you're like, well, okay, bye. That'd be my biggest piece of advice, is take the good clients. Don't settle for the ones that are going to mess you around too much.
There you go. Cody Weitzel says itemization is very important in cleaning service, so I think you should speak with the manager or the owner before moving forward. And that's excellent. If this is a first-time situation and you're running into it and there's a surprise, you show up and there's some kind of cleaning solution there, like hint, hint, my dog peed or pooped on the carpet, you should bring it up with the manager. And I'm going to agree with this for this reason. If nothing is said and the cleaner cleans it up, what they're doing is setting a precedent that they will do it again. And so if there's a conversation, if there's a conversation up front, like, hey, we took care of this today, but want to let you know that we do have a service that provides that for an additional fee. So that the expectation is, don't be leaving the cleaning solution for me again if you know that you haven't trained your dog properly. And this is a recurring situation where every time I come back, I'm going to be expected to clean this up. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. And then there's somebody that says it doesn't sound pleasing to work with people with pets. And I love that.
Ironically, no. And like I used to get told a lot that, my job was their dream job. And you're like, I'm not sure you understand how stressful this is, frankly, because and the worst part is like you get a bond with their pet. And you want to do the best by their animal as well, because you love them. Even though they're not yours, you love them and you care about them. And then sometimes when you see that, Fluffy's mum isn't necessarily doing what Fluffy needs from Fluffy's mum, it puts you in a really weird predicament that you're like, I want you to do better because your dog is awesome. And it's ethically, it's really hard. And then like you guys, contractually, it's really hard as well. And there's not quite as many like big dog sitting, pet sitting businesses, right? As there are cleaning companies and things. You usually have like more management structure. So we're like, a lot of pet sitters are just a pet sitter. So their point of escalation is them. So they can't go talk to my manager. They don't have that extra level of defense. So we then get put in this really weird position where we are the business owner, the service provider, the contract writer, the social media manager, whatever, and consequently it can be really stressful. And then you work like 24/7 and then people never seem to find it enough. That's the other thing. It can be quite thankless. It's why some pet sitters, if in do charge through the backside for their services, and I make them right, because it's not easy. It's a lot harder than it sounds.
I'm really glad you brought that up and gave us a realistic picture of that.
Yeah. Sorry, I know that's kind of a bit of a bubble burst when you're dealing with somebody with pets, because usually you want the bright sunny side. But you, again, this is something that your audience must be able to resonate with as well, because sometimes just your service isn't as valued and your expertise isn't as valued just because you're like in that service tier of work. And it's like the
Well,
conflict.
you
Mhm.
brought up a point earlier that is really interesting, and it's about the stress level of the pet. And I know
Yes.
for a house cleaning perspective, every time I show up to a home, and this is the first time the pet has met me, I request that the homeowner be present. I don't mind
Oh
if we
yeah.
pick up a service, and it's okay if the homeowner is not going to be there when we clean. But the first time I meet the pet, I want
Mhm.
the homeowner to be there, because the pet will take the cues from the homeowner. Like, do we
Yeah.
trust this person? And am I going
Yep.
to bite their leg off when they show up, or is this person okay? And so the
Okay.
first time that I show up as a house cleaner, I've got my latex or my nitrile gloves on. And
Mhm.
that's because I'm going to be wearing them every single time I come to their
Yep.
house. And
Yep.
so I want to make sure that when I meet the animal for the first time and the parent is there, that I can put my hand down with my glove on and let them smell and sniff my hand and
Mhm.
go, okay, that's a weird scent. And how you
Mhm.
talked about animals have a strong
Oh yeah.
ability to smell. Every time they see that, they're going to know this is the lady that's coming to the house. And she's also the person that's going to be running that loud vacuum cleaner.
Yes. Yes. And
And so,
mops and brooms and all of those weird things that some dogs really love to chase. Which must make it really awkward for you guys. But yeah, absolutely. Do not enter a house, certainly the first time, without the dog's guardian in there. And I would also ensure that but this is me being an overcautious trainer now, because I deal with a lot of big scary dogs, right? The big scary dogs are kind of one of my main points of focus.
mhm,
Um, Also, just protect yourself and ask if they have a bite history. Ask
mhm,
if they have anything like that, because like you make your living physically, right? If your body is not involved, you ain't earning money. And
mhm.
sure, you might have insurance for all of that, but still you don't want to get bitten. So do just ask, get a little bit of history on the dog, ask if they have a bite history. When you are being introduced to a dog, encourage them to have the dog on a lead,
Mhm.
because if the dog acts out of character for whatever reason, because socialization is a weird process, and a lot of the time one of the things that dogs, even like full grown dogs, will have found that their socialization misses is things like high vis,
Mm.
which might be something you guys use. Or have like luminescent color like rags or whatever, and they can find those sorts of things weird, and you are going to
Mhm.
smell weird to the dog. You're not going to smell like the other humans that they've interacted with. So those points are risky points, right? You're coming into the dog's safe space, you smell really weird, and so let's just take an inch of extra caution. And a leash is a great way to do that. So yeah, do be in there, and I would recommend dogs on a lead before they meet you.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you for that.
Try
One
that.
of the things that I have found personally, and I want to find out from a person with so
Mhm.
much experience with dogs, as a house cleaner going inside people's homes, because that's sometimes where we find the accidents happen, where
Mm.
it's an unusual situation and then the dog feels out of its, I mean, it is at its home, but now there's a weird
Yep.
person and they're moving
Yep.
all of their stuff around and picking up stuff and dusting
Yeah.
under it. And like I say, running the vacuum. And that's when the dogs get kind of skittish and then they could have an
Mhm.
accident or something like that. I find that stopping to give the dog a directive before I go into the next room, like, hey guys, I'm about to come into this room and I'm going to be cleaning and vacuuming. This is a good time for you guys to run outside and play or go in the other room. And just almost as if they understood me, but give them a little bit of a heads up, like, hey, I'm coming in there in a couple of minutes. Okay, guys, I'm in
Mhm.
here now. I'm going to let you run in the other room. Okay. And just by kind of showing
Yep.
them what happens, they get up and they go play in the other room. And then I feel like somehow we're working together instead of not
Yep.
working against each other. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yep. Absolutely. So they're not necessarily going to understand all of those words, but when it becomes a practiced pattern that
Uh-huh.
they understand and they get some level of predictability with that, that's when you'll see like them wander off into a different room. Like, oh,
Uh-huh.
okay, she always talks to me
Uh-huh.
and says these things, and then she comes in here. Okay, I'm gonna go in there because I just want to go sleep. And
Yes.
that's when you reach like harmony.
Yes.
Do you get like the intrusive dog as well, like the one that's here when you're working? Like if you're
No,
cleaning a toilet or something, they're here.
no, because
Oh, okay.
I've been really keen to try to create a formula, like you said, where
Hmm.
there's harmony and there's a
Cool.
routine and they can kind of expect something.
Okay.
But then also I look at a little dog, and this is coming from years of experience in the cleaning
Hmm.
industry, but I look at a little dog as having feelings as well.
Yeah.
And so if a dog has an accident, I think he's probably as embarrassed or ashamed as a person would be if they had an accident.
Yeah.
And
Scared
so
is
I
usually
don't
the.
yeah, I don't wanna make the dog shamed or embarrassed that they
Mm,
had an accident, and if we can clean it up, then I would like to be able to try to, like you said, address that with the homeowner, figure out a
yeah.
way to do it where the dog is not embarrassed that there was an accident, but then
Yeah.
maybe address, I don't know, puppy pads or something like that. What is your take on those little puppy pads that parents lay out and the dog can then have their
Personally, I'm really not a fan, and unless it's a like I said, like with severe weather, unless there's severe weather involved, and that has to be the option, or like they're in an apartment and they're 30 floors up. If those are the ones that are the case, then yeah, I do. I'm a really big advocate of real grass potty pads. So as opposed to like the fake ones, the real grass ones, certainly with puppies and usually with older dogs, because they've already acquainted themselves with going on grass. It feels a
yeah,
little bit more natural for them, so they kind of go,
uh-huh,
"Oh, there. This is where I would normally go to the toilet. Okay, I'll do it here," and it just helps to focus them in a spot and not duplicate training, because potty pads themselves, that weird cushiony whatever it is a really unique surface. So this goes back to what we said earlier about generalization. Um,
uh-huh,
that surface is not something that nature replicates in any way, shape, or form. So
got
when
it.
you then try and train the dog off of the potty pad, particularly if you are in an apartment and you can't phase it outside, it becomes quite problematic. And a lot of dog parents just end up toilet training their dog twice, which is such a pain. Nobody wants to do the training once and then go, oh my God, okay, now I've got to do it again, just in a
Uh-huh.
different set of circumstances. Um, so yeah, if they do need something like that, if they do need that, and you can't just like kick them into the garden, I mean, I say that in the nicest way possible. Don't physically kick the dogs, but if they can't go outside, real grass pads are your next best.
Real
Yeah,
grass pads?
yeah. So they
So
actually
it
will
looks like grass, it's like artificial turf or something?
Yeah, no, it's real grass. They actually grow like a small tray, essentially, of grass that drains really well into something below it, and usually they're like a subscription service that will like pick it up every month and
Uh-huh.
send you a new one. So they will literally just give you a new grass pad every month so that it stays somewhere that your pup wants to pee.
So
Um,
in this situation where
mhm,
like my friend who's now in the senior years and has
mhm,
some mobility issues and is not able to actually, like you said, use the wet wipe and whatever to reach
mhm,
down and pick up her dog, is
yep.
this something that would then kind of retrain that dog to then still keep his dignity while she's trying to keep hers?
Somewhat, yeah, absolutely. And because most dogs are trained to grass, it becomes more seamless. Do you know what I mean? The training then becomes much more understandable for your dog, so that they can go, oh, grass is normal, and then sometimes it'll take a little bit of encouragement, but not usually. An adult dog who's already trained to grass is usually quite easily transferable.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Our time today is up, and I've got a couple of questions that we didn't answer. Do you have just a second more, or
Yeah,
should
sure.
we
Fire
answer
away.
those questions in the notes below?
If
And
you've
I
got
want to thank you guys so much for showing up. This was awesome. I've learned so much myself. Um, Cynthia says, is there a specific chemical for cleaning pet stains? So if the
um,
smell is already there, the pet stain is already there, what do we use?
So again, this would depend on the surface. So I love baking soda for carpets. Leave that down as long as possible. If you can get 24 hours out of it, awesome. If you can get 4 hours out of it, fine. Um, That works really well for carpet. For wood floors, usually you don't have to worry so much unless it's been sat. That's when I like the oxygen bomb for that. What else did we say? Nature's Miracle. And your one was, oh gosh, what was your one?
So the one that we've had really great success with is Odoban
That's
stain and odor remover.
it.
And so that's the one that we prefer. I know lots of people use Angry Orange. Do you
No,
use
that's not
that
a
where
name
you
I
are?
know. No,
Okay.
I'll check them out. Thank you.
That's one that has a really great resounding result from a lot of the customers that we have. So that's
Okay,
another product as well. And
cool.
I will leave links in the notes below to all of that, as well as the links where you can find the training materials that Allie has put together. Allie, where would our listeners go to find you?
Remarkable.com is the website. All my social media links work. Then other than that, I'm Remarkable on Facebook, Twitter, re.barkable on Instagram, which was really nice and awkward. I was like, oh great, one person managed to sneak in there. But yeah, so they're my main platforms. But yeah, I don't think there's anywhere else. If there is, I'm sure I can let you know.
I've got links in the notes below to all of her social media so you guys can follow her as well. But this has been really highly interesting. I thank you so much, Allie, for joining us today and for having this conversation. I want to thank all of you guys that joined us and have all of your comments here. If there's anything we missed, because we do have some here about anxiety and what happens with your dog, we will answer those questions for everybody that's watching the replay and also for those of you that joined us that we didn't get your questions answered. Thanks again for today. Until we meet again, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Leave the world a cleaner place than when you found it.